Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Come on into the classroom, Wondrous Roots, Saturday Zoom webinar. Today is February 28th, the last day in February, actually, right? Let me just look. I think I'm right. Last day in February. Yes. And tomorrow is the 1st of March. Wow. We'll see if it comes in like a lion or a lamb. It's supposed to come in like one or go out like the other. I think last year it came in as a lion and went out as a lion, as I recall, really windy. And I think we turn our clocks, we spring ahead and get the longer days again next weekend. So anyway, again, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. My name is Rebecca Becky Montrone. Have a business here in Keene called Wondrous Roots. I am a holistic, oops, hang on one second. Holistic healthcare practitioner. I have to clear my throat. Hang on. With a degree in holistic nutrition. And thank you, Katie. Thank you for this, and thank you for being here, everybody. Really appreciate. Now I'm going to thank you all in a moment about Dale. But anyway, I just wanted to say, yeah. So I have a degree in holistic nutrition. I'm also an herbalist. I'm also, I guess, most foremost, what I would describe myself is a detective, a health detective. So I like to explore the reasons for health problems and the roots of them, wondrous roots, what's going on with different things, how we can prevent them, ideally, how we can correct them if possible, how we can slow them down if it's something that's progressive or whatever, using root strategies. And so that would be like things like, let me give you an example. All right, so somebody came in Friday looking for something for plaque psoriasis. So the first thing I say is you got to deal with the immune system dysregulation, right? I mean, so that's internal. Yes, I have a lovely fig cream that will help with your fig plus cream that will help with your the aggravation of your skin, but it won't do anything about why you have it in the first place. So we always want to, yeah, if we can use something that's helpful, harmless, to deal with the symptoms while trying to address the problem itself, then we do that. So root things like that. And then I have a degree, I am a clinical herbalist, so studied herbalism extensively, but come from a long line of compound pharmacy in my family and my DNA. So love, again, to think up formulas like if this is like when I made my fig cream, what are the things that will settle the skin down? What things would work, excuse me, well together to do that. So that kind of thing. Our business hours here at Wondrous Roots, we're located in Keene, New Hampshire on the 3rd floor of the Miller Forge building, beautiful old mill building on Roxbury Street, which is right off downtown Central Square in Keene. We have elevator access most of the time, like 99% of the time. Once in a while, we have a problem there. But and we have free parking, big parking lot of free parking. So anyway. Number here is 603-439-2603. You can also reach out to me from either of our websites, the first one being wondrousroots.org. So that is my website devoted really to education, a lot of pages. And if you go to learn on the drop-down navigation, you'll see a lot of topics. I have lots of information. You'll find a lot of these webinars there as well, according to topic. You can pick up my other videos, YouTube, Wondrous Roots, and then Rumble, Wondrous Roots channels. Contact us comes to my private email from that website. And then also there's another website, shopwondrousroots.com. You can easily get from one to the other from each one, but that's our online store. So we have a physical shop here where I carry our herbal products that we make. We have a wonderful skincare line as well. All botanical, no chemical preservatives or any of that stuff. No phthalates, however you pronounce that. Parabens, those evil things. And then I have a lot of products that I stock supplements from other vendors, from other manufacturers, especially things that I'm enthusiastic about and use frequently with my clients, but they're available to the general public. So I think that's all I really need to say about that. And again, thank you everybody for being here. So as all of you who are here, I'm sure probably already know, Dale, my husband, who's a big part of Wondrous Roots here, did end up passing away, quite remarkably so. We'd never expected that when he was sick. We always thought, you know, we were going to turn that corner and things were going to turn around, and that was not what happened. But I want to thank you all for your wonderful, everybody's been just remarkable with reaching out to me with support and condolences and you name it. So I will be thanking you individually if I haven't already. But I do want to thank you, and our family definitely thanks you. I am really energized planning his service, which will take place on March 21st, Saturday, March 21st. So I won't be doing a webinar that day. Here in Keene at Elm City Church, and I've got wonderful people already lined up participating in that. So, and open to the public. So anybody who wants to be here certainly would love to have you. But anyway, I'll share more about Dale's too. His obituary can be found on dignitymemorial.com and was published in the Keene Sentinel today as well. But wonderful guy. And I will see him again. The reason I can be so straightforward about it and calm is because of our faith in God. We both share faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. And I just know that once you get skyrocketed from the earth into heaven, there's nothing you want to come back for. And so I'm so thrilled for him. And I'll be sharing more about all of that too at his service. But anyway, thank you, everyone. All right. We've been talking about the ears, well, doing a series on the five senses. Started out with, oh, if you want to participate, type in the Q&A like Katie did. Raise your hand and type in there, or no, raise your hand and you can, I'll call on you, you can talk or type into the Q&A as well. So we've been doing the five senses, and it's located on my body parts page. Let's see, let me see what I need to do here. Okay. Share my screen first so I can show you where to find things. All right, am I? Okay, share. All right. Okay, chat over here. And get you guys all over here. I think I have a really nice big screen that Dale set me up with. Yes, Dale's like all over the place here at Wondrous Roots. Not in spirit. I mean, his like things that all have to do with him. His spirit is where it wants to be. Okay. So if we go to body parts on Learn, you can see we did the eyes series. So you can use this trusty floating index, right? That will take you right down to the eyes. And you'll see that I did like 3 sessions on the eyes. Then we went to the ears. Go to the ears, it will take you right there. We did structure, anatomy, and function. Just wondering why that video is not showing up the way it should. I might have to pay attention to that later. There we go. Structure, anatomy, and function. So here you can pick up the video. And you can also pick up, and I'm probably going to do a short review of what we've already gone over. The ears part 1, then hearing loss under the microscope, the ears part 2. And then we're doing the first part of part 3. I'm sorry, but I could not get to all of it in one presentation. There's just a lot if you want to do a topic justice and not just give like, you know, the index and cover just the major parts. So you can click on the videos there. You can also find the videos on my Rumble or YouTube channel, but This is where you find the actual PDFs that I present here when we're doing the webinars. So part one, we went through the ears, this is basically your outer ear, right here, up here till you get to the eardrum. Then it goes into this really cool middle ear part where you've got the stirrup, the ossicles, the stirrup, the anvil, and the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrups. The stirrups lock into the oval window. The oval window now takes you into the inner ear. So just want to review that part. I'm not going to review a lot of things, but we talked about how, isn't that interesting? I think that kind of freaks me out. It looks like there's a snail sitting under our cheekbone, right under the eye there. This kind of gives me the willies, but it's pretty cool. Gives you like a perspective of where the ear actually is. We think of the ears being over here, right? Oh, the ear's over here. No, the ear's like half into your head. Okay, so oval window, the round window. Here we have the inner ear. We talked about that last time because we were talking about hearing loss. And hearing loss, unless it's due to like wax buildup or something like that in the outer ear, it's taking place in the inner ear, where you've got the cochlea that has all the stuff for little hair fibers and everything. This is the vestibulary apparatus we're going to be talking about today, because that has to do with balance and all of that kind of stuff. What else inside the cochlea? These hairs are super important, and the hairs wear down, and the hairs can wear down prematurely or more aggressively because we have loud noises or maybe toxic medications or different things, or just age in general. The hairs can sort of wear out. But they're super important, and once they're damaged, you cannot regenerate them, and that's the sad thing. So we want to keep our parts of our ears as healthy as possible for as long as possible. And just like the eyes, we have to take care of them when we're young if we want them to stand in for us really nice and strongly when we're old. Okay, so sound from ear to the brain. Brain is super important. Hearing is an active, not a passive process. Okay, so I'm going to close this one out. Stop my share. And then let's go to number 2. The 5 senses, the ears. The ears, part 3, no, part 2. This was last time. There's been a little bit of delay here for obvious reasons. But here we talked about hearing loss. So hearing related issues, we've got sensorineural hearing loss, which is your most common form of hearing loss, which comes on gradually: noise exposure, noise damage, aging, maybe a big blast you should never have been around and your ears had to endure that. You can have auditory tumors, drug side effects. Conductive hearing loss is more usually temporary. It has to do with things like earwax or eustachian tube dysfunction. You've got a cold or something like that, and eventually resolves. So we talked about that. Sensorineural hearing loss. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. So again, the hair cells get damaged. Again, all of these beautiful models of that takes place in the middle ear. Aging, chronic noise exposure, blah, 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 blah. Damaged hair cells, they don't come back, so try to keep those nice. And then auditory nerve damage, you've got the cochlear nerve and this vestibular nerve coming out of it's cranial nerve 8 coming out of, oh, I didn't share my screen. Well, that was kind of unfortunate. Sorry about that. I'm like going through all these slides thinking I'm sharing them, and I'm not. Sorry about that. But I'm not gonna like go back. I'll just um I'll just say auditory nerve damage. Okay. Yeah. This is really cool. This is cranial nerve 8. It's coming out of it's made up of these the vestibular nerve coming from no, the cochlear nerve coming from the cochlea, and the vestibular nerve coming from the vestibular apparatus right there. So anyway, pattern and progression. This is what people end up with, hearing aids for. People can end up with hearing aids for other reasons too, like children who need a cochlear, well, who are born with problems and things like that. But conductive hearing loss is again some obstruction of some sort, fluid in the ear, and something that can be. There, we've got that lovely wax. All right, so I'm going to stop my share. And hopefully this time I'll remember to start my share when I find my other presentation for today, which is the ears part 3. Let's see if I can get this framed properly. You guys know how I hate it when the framing isn't right. Whoops. Where are you? Share. Okay. Okay. That looks right. Part 1 of 2. I had to continue working on this morning to get it up to where I wanted it to be. And I got as far as I got, which was through Meniere's disease. So here we go. Again, to participate, type into the chat, type into the Q&A, raise your hand. And I've got you all listed here who are with me. So I'm so glad to see you all spending part of your Saturday with me. Okay. Part 3, when sound and balance misfire, exploring the complex world of auditory distortion and vestibular dysfunction. And several of you have said you're really looking forward to this because a lot of people suffer from dizziness for one reason or another, whether it be frank vertigo or dizziness or Meniere's disease. And what is it? And is it serious? And how can I get rid of it? Kind of thing. So there's all of that. Then there's also tinnitus. And I think I'm pronouncing that right. The reason I pronounce it tinnitus is because there's 2 N's, right? So tinnitus would be with 1 N, according to what I learned in phonics. So they're probably interchangeable, and I didn't check, but that's what I'm talking about. Tinnitus is what I call it. So let's just smooth through here. So today we're going to focus on tinnitus and other auditory perception disturbances, vestibular dysfunction, and balance disorders, how the inner ear and the brain signaling can misfire, and why symptoms persist even when imaging can be normal. A lot of times people have something going on with their balance and go and have an MRI or something to see if there's something going on that they need to be concerned about, and it can look, your imaging can look just fine. And that's because a lot of times these things are more mechanical than they are, well, yeah, okay, we'll get there. So tinnitus and auditory distortions. I'm so glad to say I don't have tinnitus. But a lot of you do. It's very dreadful according to all description. And of course, it doesn't really take for you to experience it to just imagine that. Of course, it would be, would drive you nuts if you heard constant ringing in the background or some other sound. So tinnitus is perception of sound without an external stimulus, ringing, buzzing, hissing, roaring, clicking, or if you've got your heartbeat involved. We call that pulsatile tinnitus. It can be unilateral on one side or bilateral, both. It can be come and go, intermittent, or all the time. So tinnitus is kind of describes a manifestation of a symptom. It's like multiple sclerosis, right? Multiple sclerosis, we think of it as a disease, but it is telling us that there are multiple sclerotic lesions. It doesn't really tell us why. Tinnitus is sort of similar in that tinnitus tells us there's something going on, but it's not like, oh, I hope I don't catch tinnitus. I hope, tinnitus is a disease process. It's not a disease process. It's a manifestation of something gone wrong, which could be a number of things. So there's the peripheral tinnitus, which is cochlear driven. Okay, so again, the cochlea is that wound up thing that looks like the shell of the snail, not the tentacles. The cochlea that has the hairs in there, the cilia that have to be maintained health for us to hear well. So hair cell damage, noise-induced injury, which damages the hair cells. High frequency hearing loss. We went through that. High frequency hearing loss is like the first part of hearing loss that goes in sensory neural hearing loss. And makes it difficult to hear at the higher frequencies, like children's voices or higher pitched sounds. Also makes it hard to make a difference between words when you're listening to conversation, making that. Ototoxic exposure, so something you were exposed to, like maybe a medication with a side effect that was toxic to the ears. Central tinnitus is the brain compensating for reduced input, increased auditory cortex activity in the brain, a maladaptive signal amplification, and we'll go through that in more detail. Loss of input, the brain turns up the volume. It's like you can't hear properly, and so the brain tries to compensate because it knows it's supposed to be hearing, sort of kind of thing. And then, so it gives you something to hear that you didn't want. Thank you, no thank you, brain. Two broad types of tinnitus. Subjective tinnitus is the most common. It's tinnitus in which only the particular person can hear it. It's the most common type of tinnitus. It can be caused by ear problems in your outer, middle, or inner ear. And it's like if I go up to that person and listen, they can say it's really loud, but I can't hear it. Now, there is the objective tinnitus in which a doctor can hear when he or she does an examination, or I have a person that I know who years ago, she had a clicking in her ear. I think it was eventually, in recent years when I've seen her, I think it was eventually resolved. I think they poured Teflon into her. Oh, don't quote me on this because this was a while back, but they poured Teflon, I think, in to stop this. But when I would go up to her ear, you could hear the click. So that was this kind of thing, the objective tinnitus, in which somebody else can hear it. That's really pretty rare. So then within the tinnitus categories, and maybe if you have tinnitus, you can like sort of pick out what you've got here along this menu. The tonal tinnitus, pulsatile tinnitus, that feeling of you can hear your heartbeat in your ear. Somatic tinnitus, which can be radiating from like TMJ. You've got temporomandibular joint dysfunction or maybe a cervical spine kind of issue. And then intermittent neural activation. Tonal tinnitus, a continuous internal tone, ringing, buzzing, or hissing. And it's um, just really there most of the time, if not all the time. Continuous internal tone. Most common type for tinnitus. This is the most common, often linked to high frequency hearing loss. Now, what's really interesting is people will say to me, oh, they've discovered that tinnitus is related to the brain. It has nothing to do with the ears. Well, in some cases, right? That doesn't mean across the board. I think that's really important to understand. Other people have told me, oh, tinnitus is I read or I heard or someone said or I listened to someone speaking about this and it's parasites. There is not one cause of tinnitus for all people. And so I think that that can be encouraging, right? Because people are freaking out. I must have parasites. I have to have parasites, or I must have a brain problem. My brain must not be functioning properly. And what else is going on in my brain? So, in a nutshell, what's happening with tonal tinnitus? When the cochlea, cervigenic etiology also when turn the head to the left or right, and that's what I was saying, like something with the spine in the cervical area, Wayne. Yeah, um, definitely. And you can actually end up with some good help from a good chiropractor when it comes to that kind of thing, or maybe even craniosacral maneuvers. Good point. So when the cochlea is damaged, here we go again. Here's the cochlea. And particularly the outer hair cells responsible for detecting high frequency sounds, the amount of auditory input reaching the brain decreases. The central auditory system does not passively accept this reduced input. Instead, it compensates by increasing neural gain, essentially turning up the volume in an attempt to detect missing signals. This heightened spontaneous firing in the auditory cortex is interpreted as sound, even though no external sound is present. It's not coming in through your external auditory canal. In tonal tinnitus, that internally generated neural activity is perceived as a continuous ringing, buzzing, or high-pitched tone. Pulsatile tinnitus, a rhythmic sound that often matches the heartbeat. Usually vascular in origin, turbulent blood flow may indicate structural cause and can warrant evaluation. I've had this occasionally, like late at night, if I've stayed up really late or something like that, and I'm sitting in bed and I'm like, I've occasionally had that sound of my blood, my heart beating in my ear. But I would say maybe I could count that on my hand of 5 times or something like that. It's not something that happens all the time, but it was also not anything that concerned me. I'm not saying that that means you shouldn't be concerned, especially if it's like persistent. Pulsatile tinnitus differs from tonal tinnitus in that it usually has a physical source. Rather than being generated by altered neural firing alone, pulsatile tinnitus is often caused by turbulent blood flow near the ear. Because the inner ear sits close to major arteries and venous sinuses, changes in blood velocity, speed, or vessel structure can create rhythmic vibrations that are transmitted to the auditory system. Patients often describe a whooshing or thumping sound that matches their heartbeat. In many cases, pulsatile tinnitus is benign, so not to be concerned about, and related to normal vascular flow that has simply become more noticeable, which it might late at night, right? However, it can occasionally indicate a more significant underlying issue, such as carotid artery narrowing, those arteries that are bringing blood up to the brain that are right near the ears. Vascular malformations, like you might have a meningioma or something like that in your brain, close to those areas, or rare tumors, which is why meningioma is like most meningioma are benign, and they are benign tumors in the brain. Which is why new or persistent pulsatile tinnitus warrants medical evaluation. So I would say, like, if like me, this happens once in a blue moon, it's late at night or whatever, not a concern. Like I would never I would never myself seek help for that or evaluation. But if you've never had this and it is persistent and coming, get it checked out. There's no harm getting things checked out. Somatic tinnitus, changes with jaw or neck movement. Again, going back to what Wayne was saying with the cervogenic etiology source, linked to TMJ or cervical tension, reflects crosstalk between sensory and auditory pathways. It's not purely cochlear. So this is something that's, again, generating from your musculoskeletal structure up in here. So what's actually happening with somatic tinnitus? Somatic tinnitus occurs when tinnitus changes in intensity or pitch with movements of the head, neck, jaw, or even pressure on certain muscles. Unlike purely cochlear-driven tinnitus, this form reflects interaction between the somatosensory system and the auditory pathways in the brainstem. Nerves from the cervical spine and the temporomandibular joint, right in here, converge with auditory nuclei, particularly in the dorsal cochlear nucleus. When there is neck tension, jaw dysfunction, or musculoskeletal imbalance, these inputs can alter auditory signaling and modulate tinnitus perception. In other words, the sound is not coming from the ear alone. It is influenced by crosstalk between structural and auditory neural pathways. That makes sense. There's a lot of stuff up here, right? I mean, above the shoulders, when you consider the brain is up here, the top of your spinal cord, your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth. I mean, there's just a lot going on. And it makes sense that you can have some crosstalk there. That comes as no surprise. And then there's intermittent neural activation. Occasional internal sound that comes and goes. It's not constant. It's not progressive. It's more consistent with central signaling fluctuation than any new structural damage. So sometimes you're like, I don't know what that was, right? I don't know. But it doesn't stick around and you're just like, well, who cares? So again, a little bit kind of just sort of summarize that. Intermittent neural activation refers to occasional internal sound perception that comes and goes rather than remaining constant. Unlike classic tonal tinnitus, which is often tied to stable cochlear damage and persistent central gain, intermittent auditory phenomena are more consistent with transient fluctuations in central auditory signaling. The brain's sensory gating systems continuously regulate background neural activity, small shifts in neuroinflammation, autonomic tone, vagus nerve, think vagus nerve, stress levels, think stress levels, or cholinergic signaling can temporarily alter how auditory signals are processed. Interesting, cholinergic signaling, very involved in COVID-19. We've talked about that and how we can use nicotine. So the cholinergic signaling, acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter, very involved in brain activity. Can temporarily alter how auditory signals are processed. In these cases, the perception reflects dynamic central pathway activity rather than new structural injury within the ear itself. So I mean, maybe just suffice to say, all of us are probably going to have at some point in time hearing something that's a little weird, that we're like, that was odd. And then off it goes. And we forget about it. So in summary, the types of tinnitus, a symptom with multiple origins, not a single condition, not the same in all people. The most common form is subjective tonal tinnitus, typically associated with sensory neural hearing loss and increased central neural gain. So that's like when, as your hearing loss, as you're having more and more hearing loss with your sensory neural hearing loss, the kind that's most common with aging, you might have an increase in tinnitus with that as part of that whole lovely gift package of sensory neural hearing loss. Less commonly, pulsatile tinnitus reflects a vascular disturbance and may warrant medical evaluation. Somatic tinnitus arises from interaction between musculoskeletal and auditory pathways, while intermittent neural activation represents transient or changing fluctuations in central signaling rather than fixed structural damage. Recognizing the mechanism behind tinnitus helps distinguish between neural patterns from those requiring further assessment and allows for more precise, individualized management. Tinnitus is bad. I mean, you don't want to have tinnitus. Linked to, why it's so distressing too, it's linked to the limbic system activation, which is our emotions and all of that, the emotional tagging of sound, sensory gating disruption, hypervigilance, setting you on edge. And the terribleness of tinnitus. Tinnitus is often distressing not simply because of the sound itself, but because of how the brain processes it. The auditory system is closely linked to the limbic system, which governs emotion and threat perception. When an internal sound is interpreted as unfamiliar or concerning, it becomes emotionally tagged, increasing attention and amplifying awareness. So not only have you now got the tinnitus that you can hear, because of its attachment to your limbic system, the emotion and threat perception, it's amplified. So you've got it already, it's there, and now it's standing out to you on another level. Let's put it that way. At the same time, normal sensory gating, the brain's ability to filter out background stimuli, can become disrupted, making the sound difficult to ignore. This heightened vigilance reinforces a perception, creating a feedback loop in which attention, anxiety, and neural amplification sustain one another. I would think I'm going to actually have to ask somebody who's got tinnitus. Connie, you're with us today. I know you have, it drives you nuts. Do you ever get used to it? Does it ever kind of just sort of, I would just like to ask, does it sort of okay, it's become my new normal and it just sort of fades into your like a floater in your eye and you're my brain just sort of got used to it and it sort of faded. I'd be interested if anybody has anything to say about that. Okay, so Connie says, yes, tinnitus is so hellish. It can drive you crazy at times when it's worse, at its worst. I am told to just put up with it. That's a lovely answer. I'm not sure I have any answer that's better than that, but do you get used to it, Connie? Type in there, is it, no. She says you don't get used to it. Connie, how long have you had tinnitus? Let us know. Is it new? Long time? And do you have going on 2 years? And do you have hearing problems like sensory neural hearing loss? Is your hearing getting worse? And then Wayne is saying that white noise helps with some types, like putting on some white noise, something, especially at night, I would think in your bedroom, so it's not like driving you nuts with its own white noise. That's a good tip. It interferes with your hearing. Okay. But you didn't have hearing loss first. Okay. Well, keep the conversation going, guys. Other auditory perception disturbances. So there are other things that are not tinnitus, but they have to do with that whole mechanism of perceiving what we hear properly. So there's the hyperacusis, which is sound sensitivity, where ordinary sounds are perceived as disproportionately loud due to increased central auditory gain. Wayne is saying hearing aids help with brain struggling. And then Connie says hearing aids did not help at all, but she's talking about her tinnitus. So again, tinnitus, different causes, different reasons, different things to try, I would say. Then there's distorted sound perception. Sounds may seem warped, metallic, echoing, or unclear when neural signal processing is altered. Sound-induced pain. Normal or high-pitched sounds trigger physical discomfort due to auditory pathway sensitization. And that happened with, I talked about my client who had sudden hearing loss, irreversible, because of what it did to the hairs, and she's got that all documented from COVID, from a COVID-19 infection. I talked about her on my second program, the one before this, which was a few weeks ago. And it's not just that that's too loud, it's that it hurts. It actually causes pain, not just but physical pain. Intermittent internal auditory phenomena, brief occasional internal sounds arise from, we talked about that. Okay. And then you can have some of these conditions here, right, that cause like auditory processing difficulties. Auditory processing difficulties are not caused by the ear itself, but how the brain interprets the sound. They are often associated with neurodevelopmental conditions such as ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, speech and language disorders, dyslexia, dyspraxia, as well as learning disorders, traumatic brain injury, concussion, mood or anxiety conditions. So this really opens this up to a lot of people. We have a lot of people who are diagnosed, thinking children, but children grow up and they still have these problems, right? So ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, dyslexia, speech disorders. So you can see how, and then hearing is so important for learning. It just kind of makes a sort of a catch-22, sort of a vicious cycle, if you will, of hearing. If somebody has a hearing problem, complicating these other problems, and then these other problems complicating hearing as well. So it's great that we have auditory aids such as hearing aids, such as cochlear implants, when those things are appropriate, because that's just sad. So then when balance misfires, let's talk about the vestibular dysfunction of different things that cause us to lose our balance, to have dizziness, vertigo, that kind of thing. So here is, I think this is just so cute. Got the cochlea, it does look like a snail. And then you've got the cochlear nerve and the semicircular canals, the oval window, the round window. Class, remember those. Sensory nerve fibers, the hair cell, the cupura, which I don't know what that is. I'll find out. Okay. And then overview the semicircular canals, the utricle, and the saccule, the linear motion. We're going to look at those in a minute. The vestibular nerve, which is a branch of the cranial nerve 8, the other one being the cochlear nerve. Integration with vision and proprioception. Okay, so yeah, okay, we'll get to there. So the utricle, horizontal acceleration, and the saccule, vertical acceleration. And then the mechanisms, you have the otolith lags behind and pulls on the hair cells. Okay, we're going to see the otoliths in a moment. Those are the little crystals you hear about that can be behind, that are behind the benign positional vertigo, which we're about to get into here. Okay, how it works. You've got the macula, this is the utricle, this is the saccule, the hair cells. Anyway, the vestibular system detects motion and spatial orientation through a coordinated sequence of structures. The semicircular canals, these things, respond to rotational movements of the head, detecting changes in angular acceleration, while the utricle and saccule sense linear motion, moving forward, and head position relative to gravity. These signals are transmitted through the vestibular branch of cranial nerve 8 to the brain stem and the cerebellum, which is right back here, where they are integrated with visual input and proprioceptive feedback from the muscles and joints. We talked about that. So you've got a lot going on. You've got your eyes are involved with standing upright and not having dizziness and vertigo and all that kind of stuff. So your ears are involved, your eyes are involved, and your muscles and your joints, or your musculoskeletal system, is involved. The brain continuously compares information from all of these systems to maintain balance, stabilize gaze, and create a coherent sense of where the body is in space. When even one component misfires, the resulting sensory mismatch can produce dizziness, vertigo, or disorientation. So all of this is happening all the time. And we don't even think about it. It's just happening. And most of the time, it's happening the way it's supposed to, and we just take it for granted. Which is great. Like, we don't want to think about it. Vertigo versus dizziness, what's the difference? Vertigo is a sensation of spinning or motion, like the room is spinning. Dizziness is lightheadedness or imbalance. So you could be lightheaded because your blood pressure just dropped. You stood up too quick. And that's different than a vestibular disturbance. Benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, otherwise known as BPPV, displaced otoconia. Those crystals, magic crystals you've heard about, like people will come in and say, yeah, they told me my crystals are loose. I got loose crystals or something like that. And then we all just go, oh, that's interesting. And we don't ask ourselves, like, well, what does that mean? So, and this is a session where we ask ourselves, what does that mean? Positional symptoms. Okay, so it depends on like when you move your head. And I'll tell you how that happens to me in a second. It's a mechanical cause. It's often correctable. So these crystals are supposed to be in a certain place, and then they're out of place. Supposed to be in the canal here, and they come out of the canal. Inner ear problem that results in short-lasting but severe room spinning vertigo. Benign, not a very serious or progressive condition. Paroxysmal just comes on suddenly and unpredictable in onset. Positional, it comes with a change in head position. Vertigo, causing a sense of dizziness. Now, what happens to me is I like to wrap a scarf around my head and my eyes at night before I go to sleep. And when I do that, and then flop over onto my right side, I will start to go into this BPPV. All I have to do is open up, like lift the scarf off my eyes and just stare at something, and it immediately settles down. Now, it was happening more often and would last longer until I got back into my regular chiropractic care. So there's something there for like settling the crystals. Now, there's other ways that you can get the crystals to go back, and there's these different maneuvers, and I'm going to get into those things next time. Next time I've got to talk about some other stuff, and I want to talk about ear infections, like swimmer's ear and other stuff like that. So I've got that one, and then I have to go on to part 4, which is keeping the ears healthy. But then I also want to run through like the different things to do for this stuff. Like there's the Epley maneuvers to get your crystals back, that you can do at home and things like that. Again, mine is very mild. It happens sometimes when I have put the scarf around my eyes and lie down. Again, why? Because balance has to do with all of those things. So the eyes, when you're normally lying down to go to sleep, you don't close your eyes first and then lie down. You lie down and close your eyes. But if I wrap my head with a scarf sitting up and then flop over like that, I don't have the advantage of having my eyes clicking in with that part of my balance. So I experience that brief moment of dizziness, of vertigo. It's kind of fun. It's just kind of fun when you know it's not harmful, and you're like, oh wow, that was really weird. But that's the health detective in me. So you might not find it fun. It's not uncomfortable. Let's put it that way. Okay, so these are crystals out of place. Your head is moved so the crystals can move around the semicircular canal toward their correct space. They're supposed to be back here. So benign paroxysmal positional vertigo occurs when tiny calcium carbonate crystals called otoconia, which normally reside in the utricle, become dislodged and migrate into one of the semicircular canals. These canals are designed to detect rotational head movement through fluid motion, not loose, random particles. When displaced otoconia move within the canal during position changes, such as rolling over in bed or looking upward, they abnormally stimulate the sensory hair cells, sending false signals of rotation to the brain. The result is brief but intense vertigo triggered by specific head movements. BPPV is mechanical rather than inflammatory and is often treatable with repositioning maneuvers that guide the crystals back to their proper location. Go home, crystal. Stay in your corner, stay in your lane. Okay, so Meniere's disease. This is something entirely of its own sort of entity. Endolymphatic fluid imbalance. It's behind that. It does cause episodic vertigo, but not the benign positional vertigo. It can cause hearing fluctuation, tinnitus, and fullness. So it's like you get a nice package there of lots of goodies with Meniere's disease, a progressive condition that affects the inner ear. Something we don't want. So what makes Meniere's? Well, Meniere's disease is believed to result from an imbalance of endolymphatic fluid within the inner ear, leading to increased pressure in the membranous labyrinth. This fluid dysregulation disrupts both the cochlear and the vestibular structures, producing episodic vertigo that can be severe and unpredictable. Because the cochlea is also affected, individuals often experience fluctuating hearing loss, typically in the lower frequencies earlier on, along with tinnitus and a sensation of fullness or pressure in the ear. The hallmark of Meniere's is this cluster of symptoms occurring in attacks, reflecting temporary but recurrent disturbances in inner ear fluid dynamics rather than permanent structural collapse at the outset. So here you have this nice little poster, muffled hearing or hearing loss, a feeling of pressure in the ear, sudden dizzy spells, tinnitus, or ringing in the ears. Symptoms usually begin with the feeling of pressure in the ear, followed by tinnitus, hearing loss, and dizziness. These episodes will last anywhere from 20 minutes to 4 hours. Why is it called Meniere's disease, you might ask? I did ask that. This is what I found. It's named after Prosper Ménière. Ménière, I don't know how to speak French. It's a beautiful language, but I can't do it justice. A French physician who in 1861 proposed that vertigo and hearing loss could originate in the inner ear rather than the brain. Before his work, vertigo was largely attributed to cerebral or brain causes. Meniere's insight was groundbreaking because he localized the disorder to the labyrinth, the inner ear, which was a major shift in medical thinking at the time. So the name honors the physician who first correctly identified the inner ear as the source of this symptom cluster. He was the director of the Paris Institute for Deaf Mutes. First described the condition that was named for him, and man, I can't imagine that was a good thing to be in the 1800s, to be deaf and mute. I think of Helen Keller, right? He institutionalized a lot of people. Anyway, What triggers the onset? Like, what triggers that? Like, don't you want to be like, how do I make sure I don't get that? It's believed to arise from endolymphatic hydrops. That's what these are. Possible contributing factors include impaired fluid regulation in the endolymphatic sac, autoimmune mediated inner ear inflammation, post-viral changes affecting fluid balance, microvascular or blood flow dysregulation, migraine-related neurovascular instability, because that's what migraine is. It's an imbalance in the vasodilation. So kind of floppy vessels over here and too tight vessels over here. Yeah, and then genetic susceptibility tends to run in families. It tends to, like all of these kind of structural things can. Autoimmune illnesses can kind of run in families, but that's where epigenetics comes in. Your genes do not have to be determinant, as I say many times. Who's most at risk? It's most commonly diagnosed between the ages of 40 and 60. It often begins in one ear only. Higher risk seen in individuals with a history of migraines, autoimmune conditions, prior significant viral illness, autonomic instability, vagus nerve kind of thing, family history of inner ear disorders. And I would think because of that, when I get into my session on what to do to keep the ears healthy and to prevent this stuff, I promise you, mitochondrial energy is going to be a big thing, just like it is for the eyes, just like it is for everything. But it's going to be huge because mitochondrial energy is very key in migraine, right? We fix migraine by increasing mitochondrial energy 95% of the time. And that's so yeah, I would argue that there's definitely things. You don't have to just say, oh, I hope I don't get Meniere's. Oh, but we'll get there when we talk about that. Why does Meniere's progress? Meniere's disease is believed to involve, again, repeated episodes of endolymphatic hydrops. Everybody repeat after me. Endolymphatic hydrops, abnormal fluid buildup within the membranous labyrinth of the inner ear. Each episode of increased pressure can mechanically stress delicate hair cells and membranes, disrupting normal ionic balance and sensory signaling over time. These repeated cycles of fluid imbalance and mechanical strain may cause cumulative injury to both cochlear and vestibular structures. As damage accumulates, hearing recovery becomes incomplete, tinnitus stabilizes, and vestibular function gradually declines. Repeated fluid stress leads to cumulative sensory injury, leads to permanent loss. All right, now I do want to tell you about this. I've had good luck with Meniere's using a combination of an herbal diuretic. So, I mean, it wouldn't have to be herbal, but diuresis, probably having a nice effect on the endolymphatic fluid. I'm wondering if my lymphatic system support formula, like, well, those herbs that are not just my formula, but the herbs that support the lymphatic system flow might have an influence there. I wonder if doing things that support lymphatic drainage, such as rebounding, might have something there. Monarda fistulosa, otherwise known as bee balm or sweet leaf, not sweet leaf stevia, but sweet leaf Monarda fistulosa, low dose has been I've seen it work well in Meniere's when paired with the herbal diuretic. So again, I'll get into that and talk about how those things could be helpful. Again, the way we work here at Wondrous Roots and the way you all think, like I do, there's got to be some answers that aren't obvious to mainstream medicine. There probably are. Or if we understand what's going on, can we put our thinking caps on and say, maybe this would help? That would be logical. And that's how I came up with the way I do it with the herbal diuresis and the Monarda, just because that seems logical. So to be continued. Wow, this like came out perfect. I had no plan. Like, I don't know how long things are going to take, but this took exactly 1 hour. So I stopped at just the right part. Thank you, God. As rich as today's discussion has been, we've only begun to explore the full landscape of vestibular dysfunction. In our continuation of part 3 next week, we will examine post-viral conditions such as vestibular neuritis, labyrinthitis, chronic disequilibrium syndromes, and the role of central compensation, including how the brain integrates hearing, balance, vision, and proprioception. We kind of just went over that to create spatial stability. We will also explore why imaging is often normal despite persistent symptoms, how shared mechanisms such as inflammation, microvascular compromise, autonomic dysregulation, and neuroplastic adaptation contribute to both sound and balance misfires. And you might have more than one of those going on in the same person, sort of like the perfect storm, making those things worse. Understanding the central dynamics is essential because mechanism determines management, right? Because that's, and the inner ear and the brain function as one integrated system. And then the other systems that come in, the eyes and the musculoskeletal system. So we're going to look more into those. And I also want to bring in, infections, because you can't do a series on the ears and not bring in, people want to know about their kids and their ear infections and what's behind those and what to do about those. So I'll add that in to the problem list, the last session on the problems, which will be next time. And then on March 14th, we'll move to how to keep the ears healthy, how to prevent these problems, how to help if we already have these problems, right, Connie? And then Wayne is saying, and everybody, thank you so much for thanking me. It's really fun for me. I'm just so charged with understanding more and more about our bodies, how they work, how they misfire. And anyway, Wayne says, I have cervigenic tinnitus related to cervical stenosis and stress. Shiatsu massage devices help much, all over head and neck and back. Next exercises too, daily, because stress is daily. Yeah, it is amazing. And those are all good pointers. There's things that we can do to put in. Sometimes there's simple things that can make a big difference. You just have to be consistent and do them. So anyway, I will say goodbye. I hope you have an amazing weekend. I hope you have a great week coming up next week, and as we head into March, and we'll continue on with this topic here. Let me stop my share so I can say goodbye decently. I'll be back next week to talk about these other things, and we'll learn more. Then eventually we get to move on to, I think we have to do the nose next. Anyway, yes, God bless you all. Thanks so much. Take care. Be well.